Okay, so here is something that genuinely messed with my head when I first figured it out. There are two guys, same age, same city, both making around $70,000 a year. One of them is 30 years old and has basically nothing to show for it. A little savings, some debt, a decent apartment. The other one is 30 years old and quietly has two income streams, a growing investment portfolio, and is basically building something real while everyone else is just getting by. Same income, same city, same age, completely different trajectory. And the wild part is it is not because one of them is smarter. It is not because one of them got lucky with some crypto play or had rich parents or stumbled into some crazy opportunity. It is because they are playing two completely different games with the same money. One of them is doing what most people do: earn, spend, maybe save a little, repeat. The other one learned a handful of moves that most people genuinely never figure out. And those moves compound. Every single year, the gap gets wider and wider, and by the time they are 40, it is not even close anymore. I want to show you all 5 of those moves today. And I am going to be straight with you about which ones you can actually run right now and which ones take time to build up to. Because I am not here to sell you a fantasy. I am here to show you the actual game. Let us get into it. But before we get into the 5, I need to kill one idea first because it is the exact thing that keeps most people stuck. The story goes like this. Rich people have money so they can invest and grow wealth. I do not have money, so I have to wait until I do. That story feels logical. It is completely backwards. And I believed it myself for longer than I want to admit. Here is the truth. Rich people do not think about money the way we were taught to think about money. We were taught that money is something you earn and then spend on your life. They think about money as something you deploy. Every dollar either works for you or it does not. And if it is not working, it is basically leaking out of your life slowly, whether you notice it or not. There is one question that changes everything once you start asking it. And that question is simply this. Is my money working for me right now, or am I just working for my money? That is it. That is the whole mindset shift underneath all 5 of these, and every single thing I am about to show you is just a different way of answering that question in your favor. So keep that in the back of your head as we go through these because it connects everything. All right, number 1. The first one is honestly so simple that when I explain it, you are going to think I am holding something back. I am not. Here it is. Rich people buy things that make them money before they buy things that just cost them money. That is genuinely it. But the way that plays out in real life is way more powerful than it sounds. Think about what most people do when they get a raise or a bonus or any kind of income bump. And be honest, because I did this too. The apartment gets upgraded, the car gets upgraded, the phone, the clothes, the nights out. The lifestyle just kind of inflates automatically to meet whatever money came in. And then 6 months later, it feels exactly the same as before the raise because all those new expenses absorbed everything. That cycle has a name, lifestyle inflation. And it is the single most effective wealth killer on the planet because it is invisible. You are not doing anything wrong on purpose. Life just gets more expensive as you earn more and you end up on a treadmill that runs faster every year but never actually moves forward. What rich people do differently is they have a rule. The asset comes first. Before the lifestyle upgrade, before the new thing, before anything. A piece of that income bump gets deployed into something that produces more money. An index fund, a small investment, a business asset. Something in column A before anything goes to column B. The financial term here is the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset puts money in your pocket over time. A liability takes money out. Rich people are genuinely obsessed with filling up the asset column first. Most people spend their whole lives loading up the liability column and wondering why nothing ever changes. Now here is the version you can run this week, and I mean actually this week, not someday. Before your next discretionary purchase, run this question. Is this going to be worth more in 3 years or less? If the answer is less, it is a liability. Cool, maybe you still buy it, but you do not buy it before the asset. Even starting with 10,000 rupees or $150 a month going into a low-cost index fund before your expenses are paid is the exact same habit at a smaller scale. The size does not matter right now. The sequence does. Asset first, everything else second. That one reorder changes the math of your entire financial life over a decade. All right, number 2, and this one is the one I wish someone had explained to me at like 23. You have probably heard that the average millionaire has 7 income streams, and every time that stat gets thrown around, it sounds either inspiring or completely unrealistic depending on where you are at financially. But here is the thing, nobody explains about why that number matters, and it is not what most people think. It is not about the money from the extra streams. Not at first anyway. It is about what having multiple streams does to your relationship with risk. If you have one income stream and something goes wrong with it, you are at 0. Game over. Start over. That is just a terrifying place to build a life from. Most people feel this on some level, which is why they play it safe, why they do not take the interesting bet, why they stay in the job that is fine, but not great. Because the downside of losing that one stream is catastrophic. But once you have a second stream, even a small one, the game changes completely. Now you have a cushion. Now you can take a smarter risk with the main thing because even if it goes sideways, you are not at 0. And that confidence compounds in ways that are hard to describe until you feel it. And here is the deeper math. Each stream compounds separately. Your salary might grow 8 or 10% a year, but a YouTube channel can grow 200% in year 2. A rental property builds equity on its own timeline. A small consulting income might double in a year because you got better at one specific thing. They all run in parallel, and the one that takes off changes your whole trajectory, and you never would have known which one that was going to be. Now, I am going to be honest here because I think a lot of finance content is not. Building a second income stream while you are working full-time is genuinely hard. It takes hours you do not feel like you have after a full day. It takes working on weekends when everyone else is relaxing. I am not going to sugarcoat that. But here is what is also true, and this is the thing I want you to actually sit with. The first stream is always the hardest. Not because it makes the most money, but because you are learning the whole skill set from 0. How to sell, how to deliver value outside a structured job, how to manage your own time without a boss. Once you have that skill set, the second stream takes half the time. The third is almost automatic. The version you can start this week is not 7 streams, it is just one thing. One skill you already have that someone else would pay for. Writing, editing, coding, teaching, designing, building, fixing. One freelance client, one paid project. The actual dollar amount almost does not matter in the beginning. What you are building is the habit of earning outside your salary. That habit is worth more than the money itself in year 1. Number 3 is the one that surprises people the most when they first hear it. And it is also the one that I think gets misunderstood the most, so let me be careful about how I explain it. Rich people spend money on time, not on things, on time. And before you roll your eyes at that, because it sounds like something a CEO says to justify flying private, let me give you the actual math because it changes the way you think about every hour of your day. Say your time is worth $1,000 an hour. That sounds like a lot, but follow the logic. If you spend 3 hours doing something a professional could handle in 45 minutes for $50, you did not save $50. You spent $3,000 worth of your own time to avoid paying $50. You lost $2,950 on that deal, and most people make that trade over and over again every single week without ever running the math. Now, obviously, this scales. If you are earlier in your career, your time might not be worth $1,000 an hour yet. But the principle is identical at every level, because the question is never just what does this cost in money? The question is, what does this cost in hours, and what else could those hours have been building? Rich people are ruthless about one thing. They protect the hours they spend on things only they can do, building the skill, growing the business, creating the thing that compounds, and they hand off everything else as fast as they can afford to. The accessible version of this is not hiring a personal assistant on day one. It is just identifying the single most time-draining, low-value task in your week right now and asking whether there is any way to hand it off even partially. Even buying back 2 hours a week and pointing those 2 hours at something that compounds is the same mechanism. You are trading cheap time for expensive time. That trade pays off for the rest of your life. One more thing on this one. Your time also gets spent on information. The average person spends hours every week consuming content that entertains but does not build anything. Rich people are almost obsessive about learning as a form of investment. A book that takes 4 hours to read and changes one financial decision saves you more money than most investments. That is buying back your future time with your present attention. Same idea, different form. Okay, number 4. And this is the one where I have seen the biggest gap between what people think it means and what it actually means in practice. Everyone has heard the line, "Your network is your net worth." And most people interpret that as go to networking events, hand out business cards, connect with people on LinkedIn, collect contacts. That is not what this means at all. That version of networking is almost completely useless. Here is what actually happens at the level where real money moves. The best opportunities, the best deals, the best investments, the best collaborations, they never get posted publicly. They move through trust networks, private group chats, dinners, phone calls between people who already know each other. When someone in a wealthy circle has a deal worth doing, they offer it first to the 3 or 4 people they trust most. If you are not in that circle, the opportunity literally does not exist to you. You will never even hear about it. By the time something like that becomes public knowledge, it has already been picked over by everyone who was in the room first. This is why rich people spend time and money on relationships that have no visible immediate return. The dinner that produces no business. The trip to an event that costs money. Time spent with people who are 10 years ahead of where they want to be, not to extract something from them, but just to be in proximity. Every single one of those is a deposit into a trust bank account that pays out in completely unpredictable and unmatchable ways later. And here is the thing about being 29 specifically. This is actually the perfect time for this because you are young enough that people do not expect you to have it all figured out. Experienced people genuinely enjoy helping someone younger who shows up curious and prepared and not just trying to get something. That dynamic works in your favor right now in a way it does not when you are 45. The version you can run starting this week costs nothing but intention. Find 2 or 3 people who are where you want to be in 5 years, not to pitch them, not to ask for a favor, just to learn something from them. Show up prepared, ask smart questions, offer value in whatever way you actually can. Follow up, be consistent. One genuine relationship at the right level will do more for your trajectory than almost any other move on this list. The network is not who you know. It is who thinks of you when something real shows up. All right, number 5. And I genuinely think this is the one that separates people who talk about building wealth from people who actually do it. So pay attention to this one. Rich people are not better at avoiding failure. I want to be really clear about that because the myth is that wealthy people are just smarter or more careful or have better information. Sometimes that is true, but mostly it is not. What they are actually better at is structuring their bets so that when they are wrong, they lose a manageable amount, and when they are right, they gain an outsized amount. That gap between the downside and the upside is called asymmetric risk, and it is the actual engine underneath almost every wealth-building story you have ever heard. Here is how most people approach risk. They wait until they are almost certain before they move, because the downside of being wrong feels catastrophic. So they hold off. They wait for more information. They wait until it feels safer. And by the time it feels safe, the opportunity has already been taken by someone who moved earlier with less certainty. Or they never move at all. The wealthy approach is almost the opposite. They make a lot of smaller bets knowing that most of them will fail. But they size each bet so the failure is survivable. And they structure the wins so that when something works, they can ride it as far as it possibly goes without cutting it short. 6 out of 10 bets fail. That is fine. The 4 that worked more than covered everything else and then some. The psychological trap here is brutal, and I want to name it because it is real. Our brains are wired to hold onto losing positions hoping they come back and to sell winning positions early to lock in the good feeling of being right. Both of those instincts are exactly backwards. Cut losses fast. Let winners run. Every experienced investor says this. Almost nobody actually does it because it requires overriding instincts that feel completely natural. Here is the practical version you can apply to every financial decision starting right now. Before you commit to anything, ask yourself 2 questions. How much do I lose if I am completely wrong about this? And how much do I gain if I am completely right? If the answer to the first question is everything and the answer to the second is not much, walk away. If the answer to the first is a contained amount you can absorb and the answer to the second is genuinely life-changing, that is the bet worth making. Make being wrong cheap. Make being right expensive. That asymmetry compounded over years is how fortunes actually get built. All right, so here is the whole thing pulled together. 5 moves, all running on the same engine. Rich people buy assets before they upgrade their lifestyle. They build multiple income streams, so no single failure wipes them out. They buy back their own time and point it at things that compound. They invest in relationships before they need them because the best opportunities travel through trust, not search engines. And they structure every bet so that being wrong is survivable and being right is enormous. None of these require a head start. None of them require special access or a trust fund or some insider information. Every single one of them is a habit before it becomes a strategy. And habits start small. So here is the one thing I actually want you to do after this video. Not 5 things. 1. Look at that list and pick the move that is furthest from how you are currently operating. And then write down the smallest possible version of it you could actually do this week. This week. Not someday when you have more money or more time or more confidence, because here is the real talk version of everything I just said. The gap between where most people are at 29 and where rich people are at 40 is not built in one giant moment. It is built in small decisions made slightly differently over a long stretch of time. The difference between the 2 guys I described at the beginning of this video is not a miracle. It is these 5 moves applied consistently over about 10 years. The people who stay stuck are waiting to have enough to start. The people who build something real start so they eventually have enough. Same timeline, one decision made differently. Now you know the 5. Go make one of them. If this hit different than the usual money content you see, that is what this channel is for. Subscribe because next video I am breaking down exactly how to build your first real income stream from scratch. No audience required, no startup capital required, just the actual step-by-step of how it works.